The man who saves a life in the field is worth more than 10 who take one. He carries no glory, only gauze, will, and the weight of another man's breath. That was Sergeant Thomas Rowe, Royal Army Medical Corps, back in 1917. Into the trench. Imagine Flanders, Belgium, winter of 1916. You are standing at the lip of a communication trench, 6 feet deep, walls weeping cold groundwater shored with rotting timber. Above you the sky flickers with artillery bursts and signal flares. The mud here is a living, sucking thing capable of swallowing a man's boot whole. This was the world where a generation of young men learned to heal each other, not in hospitals, in the open, under fire, in the dark, with shaking hands and whatever they carried on their backs. The first field dressing. Every British soldier carried, sewn into the lining of his tunic, a small oilskin package, one sterilized lint pad attached to a bandage. The concept was radical. The wounded man himself or the comrade beside him could apply immediate pressure before any medic arrived. The technique was direct: apply the pad firmly, bandage tight, do not remove it even if blood soaked through. This layering principle, pad on top of pad, pressure maintained, is what modern trauma medicine calls wound packing. These soldiers had no textbooks. They learned it because it worked, and word spread the way all battlefield knowledge does, quietly, urgently, between men who had just watched it save someone. The smell of a World War I trench was something no training prepared you for. Wet earth, cordite, unwashed bodies, and the sweetly terrible odour of infected wounds. A medic navigating that environment at night, by touch alone, had to locate a wound, assess its severity, and apply a dressing while both he and his patient shook from cold, shock, or terror. The hands had to know what to do before the mind had time to decide. Tourniquets and improvisation. A soldier bleeding from a severed femoral artery had, well, perhaps 3 minutes. A tourniquet, cloth or rubber tubing twisted tight with a stick or bayonet scabbard, bought him hours. Medics began marking application time in chalk on a patient's forehead, a practice unchanged in modern combat medicine. When standard equipment ran short, and it always did, puttees became bandages, entrenching tool handles became splints, rifle slings became arm supports. The principle is perhaps the most transferable lesson the Western Front offers. The tools you have are the tools you use. Fighting infection and surviving the trench. If the shell didn't kill you, the soil might. Flanders fields were, absolutely saturated with the bacterium behind gas gangrene. A wound left untreated for even a few hours could turn lethal. In the absence of antibiotics, field medics turned to iodine and Dakin's solution, a dilute sodium hypochlorite wash developed in 1915 that killed bacteria without destroying tissue. It was honestly one of the genuine pharmacological breakthroughs of the war, born not in a laboratory, but through months of desperate field experimentation. Daily survival required more than wound care. Trench foot was so prevalent that the army made neglecting foot hygiene a punishable offence. Men were ordered to change socks every 12 hours and inspect each other's feet daily. Lice, carriers of trench fever, were battled through a grim ritual called chatting running uniform seams over a candle flame to kill eggs. The lesson is unambiguous. In any prolonged field situation, hygiene is not comfort. It is operational medicine. What the trenches left us. The men who tended wounds in the mud of the Somme did not think of themselves as innovators. They thought of themselves as surviving, but the techniques they refined, wound packing, tourniquet timing, systematic triage, field sanitation, improvised shelter, form an unbroken thread running directly into every modern military first aid course and wilderness medicine handbook published today. The trench soldier, stripped of supply lines and specialist equipment, became genuinely self-reliant. He could manage a sucking chest wound with a field dressing and 2 fingers. He knew which signs meant imminent death and which bought time to act. Knowledge carried in the body is lighter than any kit and cannot be lost, burned, soaked, or stolen. That is the inheritance of the Great War's medical corps, and really, the most enduring fieldcraft lesson of the last 100 years. End of episode. This is Fieldcraft Chronicles. If this episode taught you something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for new episodes, and keep learning the old ways.